100% of the time, and that you can be and you will be. Because look, purely infallible are only the 14 Ma'sumin. Purely infallible are only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's chosen ones. And we try and we strive and we do our best to be as infallible as possible. Infallible means you don't make mistakes. We try our best not to make mistakes. We do. Well, at least I hope we do. But we do make mistakes. We do fall short. So what do we do then? I'm outlining a few of the key things that will stop you from reaching that purpose, or that will become hurdles to that. And the first, and possibly the biggest, is that when you start achieving your purpose, when you start doing well, when you find yourself being that religious person that we know we should be, it's very easy for us to lose our intention, our niyyah. And it's something we have to look at, it's something we have to address. Recite Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Your niyyah, your intention, the reason for why you're doing something, it is the most important thing you have. It is the most important thing in your arsenal. There's nothing more important than your intention. See, it's very easy when you find yourself being religious, when you find yourself upholding the values of Islam, it's very easy to fall prey to arrogance. It's very easy to fall prey to showing off. It's very easy to fall prey to the wrong intention. Even if you started out with the right intention, you started out thinking, I want to improve myself, I want to do well. When you're doing well, it's easy to think you're better than others. When you're doing well, it's easy to think that you're doing better than the rest. It's easy to become arrogant, to lose the humility that you need. And humility is one of the most important things we have. It's one of the best things you can learn, humility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wa tu'izzu man tasha wa tudhillu man tasha. He gives respect to who He wants, and He dishes disrespect to who He wants as well. See, arrogance, it's a very odd thing, but it's something that affects us. It's something that is very easy to fall prey to. Arrogance and a bad intention, it can change everything. That great work that you were doing, it can all fall to nothing. We have to protect ourselves from this, because your niyyah is the thing that will elevate you, and your niyyah is the thing that will also simultaneously have the power to bring you down. It's a hadith of Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, where the Imam, he says, a man who does something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who does a small deed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will make that big, speaking about in front of the people. Allah will show everybody as though you've done something great, something big, something really important, something brilliant. But the hadith goes on. But a man who does something big for the people, Allah will show that to be small. Allah will show the people your intention, or He will show the people the effect of your intention. If you do something purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll realize the way that I'm doing it is different. You'll realize the pleasure and the satisfaction I get from doing it is different. You'll realize the reasoning in my head is different, and you'll realize the things that affect it are different as well. But if you do something for people, if you do something to show off, to make yourself look good, to make yourself look big, to impress the people around you, you'll realize you don't have the same effect and impact. You can't. When somebody does something from the heart, you can tell it's from the heart. But when they're showing off, you can tell. And at the same time, you lose the value of what you do. There's a story at the time of one of our prophets, it's not clear which, where a man, he is building a house, and one of the prophets is passing by. As he's passing by, he sees the man's installing like a window in his house. Now, in the time of the prophet, it wasn't, your double glazed, paned windows, but he was installing a window in his house as they did in those days. The prophet goes and he knocks on the man's door. The man answers the door, he sees the prophet, he welcomes him into his home, everything. And the prophet asks him, look, what were you doing as I was walking past? The man says, oh, I was just installing a window just so I can get a bit of fresh air in the house. And the prophet says to him, if you had answered that differently, every second that you remain in this house, or every second that anybody lives in this house, it could have been working in your favor. The man asks, how? The prophet says, if you'd made your intention, I'm building this window so that in the morning I can hear the call to prayer, or I can hear the calls towards religion, as was called out in those days. So if you'd made that your intention, every time the call to prayer was heard, or every time somebody lived in this house and heard things coming from outside, you would have gotten thawab. That's building you palaces and rivers in heaven because of your intention, because of your niyyah. And we spoke yesterday very briefly about the importance of niyyah. Niyyah is that thing which can make something halal haram. It's something that can make something haram halal. See, when you need to save your life, then that thing which is haram becomes wajib on you. If it's to save your life, if your intention is to save my life or the life of another, something haram can become wajib. And in the same way, something which is halal, something which is allowed, if your niyyah is incorrect, it can become haram for you to do that. It can become completely haram for you to do that. So the first thing we have to remain wary of is our niyyah, is our intention. That's the first hurdle when it comes to trying achieving our purpose that we have to remain wary of. We have to make sure I don't lose the right intention. We have to make sure I don't have the wrong niyyah, and your niyyah can change as well. So be wary of it throughout your journey. Constantly be wary of it. Think to yourself, am I doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or am I doing it for another reason? Am I doing it for fame? Am I doing it for gratitude? Am I doing it so people are happy with me or they're impressed with me? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? The second thing, and it's important to recognize this as well, is fluctuations in our iman. And we spoke about this briefly yesterday as well. Your iman, it won't always be at that highest level. You won't constantly feel like you're super connected with your Lord. You won't constantly feel incredibly spiritual. You won't. There will be times where it gets tougher. There will be times where you don't really feel connected to your Lord. There will be times where you don't feel any connection with your religion. That happens. That happens. It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean you're a terrible Muslim. No. It's just the way that life ebbs and flows. The verse that I recited at the start in the khutbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, tilka al-ayyamu nadawiluha bayna an-nas. The days are alternated between the people. Some days you have good days, some days you have bad days. It's normal. It happens. This works for iman and faith as well. But there's two things that I want to focus on. When it comes to iman, when it comes to your faith fluctuating, when you have good days and bad days in your faith, there's two things that I want to focus on because this is split into two aspects. One is the practical side of things and one is the spiritual side of things. There will be times where you know in your head, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. You know, I'm meant to do this and I'm meant to do this and I'm not meant to do that. You will know in your head what the reality is. You will know in your head what you're meant to do, that Islam is correct and all of that. You'll have that in your head. But getting up for Fajr is just so much effort sometimes. Reading your namaz is just so difficult sometimes. In those moments, you know your spirituality, that's where it is. You recognize the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence. You recognize Tawheed. You're not denying it, but you just don't have the energy or the effort, the motivation to do the practical aspects of it, the practical side of it. And that happens. That will happen. And we said in the Majlis is gone, that the salat you read when you don't have the energy for it. The salat you read when you don't want to read it. When you want to stay in bed, or when you want to carry on watching the Euros, or when you want to carry on watching the football, or doing whatever it is that you're doing, that namaz that you read in that moment is so much more dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because that's the salat that shows commitment. That's the salah that shows even when the times are difficult, I'm not turning away from my Lord. Even when I'm not feeling this immediate wave of spirituality, I'm not running away from my Lord. I'm not leaving Him behind. I'm not ignoring Him. I'm still going back to my Lord, even when I don't feel that connection. It's important to recognize you'll have those moments, but you have to stick it out. You have to grind it out. And in those moments, our scholars tell us, you know what? If you know I don't have the energy for namaz right now, do just the wajibat at least. Do just the bare minimum of salat at the very least. Get up and just stand on the musalla at the very least. Do that little bit, just to show that I've given that commitment. Qunut, it's mustahab. Okay, fine. In that moment, when you don't have the energy, tell yourself, I'll read my salat, but you know what? I'll do it without qunut this time, because qunut is mustahab. If I don't read qunut, my salat is still accepted. Your takbirs, apart from takbiratul ihram, the rest of them are mustahab. If you tell yourself, you know what? I won't do my takbirs. It'll make my namaz that tiny bit quicker, but I'll do it regardless. This is what our scholars tell us, do that. And I'm telling you, once you stand on that musalla, more often than not, you'll find even if you told yourself, I'm not going to do my qunut, I'm not going to do my takbirs, once you're doing that salah, you'll do them anyway. You'll still say Allahu Akbar. You'll still do a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, the practical aspect, sometimes you do just have to grind it out. Sometimes you do just have to force yourself to do it. But in that moment, make sure you do. In that moment, don't fall behind. In that moment, don't think, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. And the biggest thing that you can do, the biggest thing that you can do to help you in the practical aspects. I use salah as an example, but it happens every day. We make choices every day in every moment of our life. Every single day we make choices constantly, and they pertain to our religion. One of them is, am I going to pray? But another one is, am I going to backbite? Another one is, am I going to gossip? Another one is, am I going to go to this place where I shouldn't go? Another one is, am I going to listen to music or not? Another one is, will I eat in this moment or will I wait till later to eat? Constantly we're making decisions. Consciously, subconsciously, we realize or not, we're constantly making decisions, right? And those decisions, they range. Varied. Very varied. But when you make them conscious decisions, it becomes a lot harder to go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was a time where I used to really struggle with Fajr. And you know what I started doing? Fajr time, my alarm would go off and I would wake up, right? And in that moment, instead of just hitting snooze and going to sleep, I'd make sure in my mind to think to myself, to have that internal dialogue and frame it in a different way. Instead of thinking, do I have the energy for it right now? What I'd think to myself is, am I going to do what Allah told me to, or am I going to go back to sleep and ignore Allah? When you put Allah at the center of things, it becomes a lot harder to say no to Him. In that moment, when you think to yourself, instead of thinking, I'm tired, do I have the energy for namaz? Think to yourself, am I going to listen to Allah, or am I going to go against Him? It's a lot harder to say, I'm going to go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll tell you that much. It's a lot harder when you know that that's what you're doing. It's easier when you try and take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of the equation. It's easier when you try and do things without it, feeling like life is just happening. Oh no, I missed Fajr again. Oops. No, you didn't miss Fajr again. You ignored Fajr. You ignored Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The call of your Lord, you ignored it. Be more real with yourself. Be a bit more upfront with yourself about how you're behaving, about what you're doing. And you'll be able to get through the practical aspect of things as well. I've only got about 5 minutes before I want to move on to Masayib, so I want to speed through this. But this is one thing. The second thing is your spirituality. The spiritual moments where you don't feel that high level of Iman. You don't feel that connection with your Lord. There'll be times where, in fact, you question your Lord, you question whether He exists when we go through difficult times in life. When you go through tough moments in life, it's easy to look at yourself and think, Allah, why me? Allah, why have you done this? How can a Lord who claims to love me so much make me go through this? How can a Lord who claims to love me so much put me through this? How can a kind Lord do this to me? We think that. It's normal, it happens. It comes up in our life, and these thoughts, they will enter your mind. That's the spiritual side of your Iman fluctuating. And again, it doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean you're a horrible Muslim. It doesn't mean that you're destined for hellfire if you have these questions. No. These questions are a part of life. Allah built us, and He built us a certain way. If He didn't build us to ask questions, then why would the Imams constantly tell us, question your Lord? Question whether He exists. Question again and again and again until you have no questions left. One of the beauties of Islam is it's a religion that tells us to question. So these questions will arise. And your emotions will rise as well. And they will make you wonder, is Allah real? And that's fine. That's fine. So long as you look for the answer. So long as you look for the reality. If you tell yourself, you know what, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let this happen to me, He's not real, then you're not doing justice to your search for the truth. Then you're not doing justice to everything that you have in life. But if you look for the answers and look in the right places, then the answers are there. You'll find those answers. So in that moment, try and think about things with your intellect. Try and let your intellect take hold of you. Try and let it take hold of that conversation. Because that thought that you have, that's simply a conversation you're having with yourself. So try and let it take hold. Try and let it take charge. Because your intellect, it leads you back to your Lord. It leads you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when your Iman dips and rises, make sure that you let your intellect guide you. Let your intelligence take the lead. Because then you'll go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we don't ignore emotions. They're important. They're an important part of our religion. They're there to help us feel a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when your emotions are dragging you away from your Lord, you need something to pull you back, and that is your intelligence. That's your smarts, your wit, your recognition of how the world works, of what the world around you looks like. And it's important to see that. And the final thing before I move towards Masa'ib, that will stop you from reaching your purpose, is the daily struggles we have in life. That will happen. There are difficulties in life that will stop you from reaching your purpose. One of the biggest is financial. Your finances. Sometimes they aren't all lining up the way you want them to. Sometimes you have a bit of difficulty with your money. Sometimes your money just isn't streaming in and you think to yourself, do I have the capacity right now to fulfill my purpose, to do what I want to do, to go through with what I want to go through with? And if the answer is no, then that's okay. If the answer is no, then that's fine as well. Because it's important that we look after ourselves. It's important that we make sure we're okay. Before I look after the rest of the world, before I go trying to save the whole world, do this Islah of society, this betterment of society, I have to make sure I'm stable. I have to make sure I'm okay. But the thing to remember there is, put your mission on pause for a bit, that's fine, but don't end it. Don't shut up shop completely. If you need to take some time to focus on getting your own life in order, getting things in order for yourself, be that finances or whatever difficulty you're going through in life, that's fine, do that. But don't forget your mission. That's still there. That's waiting for you to come back to it. It's important. We all have a mission. We all have a purpose in life, and we all have to try and find it. We all have to try and figure out what it is, how we want to go about it, what we want to do with it. And when you find it, you start acting on it. And when we get to this point, right, of the difficulties in my life are becoming a hindrance to me fulfilling that mission, you'll realize that that mission that you're undergoing, that purpose that you're trying to live through, it means so much to you that you'll have to battle yourself to put that on pause to get your life back on track sometimes. You'll be tired. There'll be times where you know something's better for you in life, but you don't want to do it because that mission, it means too much to you. It matters too much to you. The work that you do, the way that you help society, the way that you help the people around you, it matters too much. And the whole point of this mission is that it affects other people around us. It's not just me. As individuals, we weren't built to live alone. We weren't built to be just me or Mehdi or Sherry or Riaz or, I don't know, Shigri Bhai or anyone. No, we're not individuals. We're a whole society. We're all together. We're all part of one big sphere, one big group. And when we do that, we realize we're at our strongest. And I'm not going into Masa'ib in this moment, but if you want to see how you deal with difficulties in life, go look at the Masa'ib and the life of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. See, nobody went through more difficulties in life than Syed al-Sajjad. Nobody saw the difficulties and the pains that he saw through Karbala, through Kufa, through Sham. And again, I'm not going into Masa'ib, I'm making a point here. Nobody saw that level of difficulty. So what did my Mawla do? Did he sit at home and cry his whole life? No. We hear he did cry. He did lament. He did do remembrance of Abu Abdullah, but what else did he do? What else was the cornerstone and the pillar of his life after Karbala? It was buying slaves from the slave markets of the time, freeing them, teaching them, and then sending them out into the world to live their lives. He integrated himself into society. He made a difference to the lives of other people. And that's how he got through the tragedy of Karbala. That's what he did. If I look at Syed al-Sajjad and say, well, he had God-given power to get through that tragedy, so it's different for him. The Ahlul Bayt, they're not sent as superheroes. They weren't sent to you as stories that we listen to at bedtime to go to sleep to. They weren't sent so that you can listen to them, or they're not the same as any comic book hero, no. They're sent as an example. Go look at their lives. What did they do in practice? When he went through the greatest difficulty of life, he engaged himself with the people around him. He engaged himself in society. He made a difference to the lives of people. That's what he did to get through the tragedy of Karbala. He didn't have a God-given power just to get through it. If he had that, then Karbala wouldn't have been a sad story at all. It wouldn't have been a tragedy at all. If the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam weren't affected by it, if they didn't feel pain for it, if they had this God-given power just to get on with things, then Karbala wouldn't be a tragedy. They had ma'rifah, they had understanding. And we have to learn from that ma'rifah, from that understanding. You see, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they are examples for us. In every instance, in every moment, they're examples for us. We've reached the point now where our Masa'ib, they turn from the companions of Abu Abdullah to his own family. The men of the Banu Hashim are the ones we remember now, and on every night we send our condolences to Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha. But today I send my condolences on her daughter Sayyidah Zainab. Bibi Zainab was a very special personality. Today, in truth, we remember Hazrat Auna Muhammad, but these Masa'ib are the Masa'ib of Sayyidah Zainab. See, Imam Ali alayhi salam began preparing for Karbala long before Karbala ever happened. It was at the time of the marriage of Bibi Zainab and her husband Hazrat Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib comes to Hazrat Abdullah and he says, "Look, Abdullah, there is something I need to speak to you about." He says to him, "Abdullah, in this world there are many fathers and sons, but there are no fathers and sons like Yaqub and Yusuf." He says there's many fathers and daughters in this world, but there are no fathers and daughters like Rasulullah and Zahra salamullahi alayha. Then he says, "Abdullah, in this world there are many brothers and sisters, but there are no brothers and sisters like Hussein and Zainab. Abdullah, if ever there comes a time where Hussein wishes to leave the city, if ever there comes a time where Hussein wishes to go on travels, Abdullah, promise me you will give Zainab permission to go with her brother. Zainab will not survive without her Hussein." And this was so true. Sayyidah Zainab could not live without her brother Abdullah and Hussein. Sayyidah Zainab, in fact, it is said, there is a tradition in the Arab world that when a marriage happens, the bride stays at home at her husband's house for 3 days. Nobody from her own family will come to visit her. On the 3rd day, the bride's mother will come to visit her. She will come find out how her daughter is doing, look after her, spend time with her, then come back to the family and relay to the family how her daughter is doing, how this new bride is getting on in her new home. 3 days after the wedding of Sayyidah Zainab and Hazrat Abdullah, my heart goes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, how he must have remembered Zahra in this moment, where he looks around, he turns to Bibi Fidda, he says, "Fidda, you were like a mother to my Zainab, go. In place of Zahra today I am sending you. Go and see how my daughter is doing." Bibi Fidda arrives at the house of Hazrat Abdullah. As Sayyidah Zainab sees Bibi Fidda, she breaks down in tears, she starts crying and weeping. Bibi Fidda begins to offer her condolences. She says, "Zainab, I understand. You miss your mother. I understand you miss Zahra. I have come here. Your family are still here. They still love you. I'm sure your mother is happy. I'm sure she is proud of you. I'm sure she is watching down over you," giving her the condolences that you would give to someone who misses their mother. At one point, Sayyidah Zainab stops and she looks at Bibi Fidda. She says, "Fidda, what do you think? I am crying because my mother has left this world, because you came instead of my mother. Fidda, I love you so dearly. I'm not crying that you came instead of my mother. Fidda, why am I crying? Fidda, it has been 3 days I've not seen my big brother Hussein. Zainab could not live without her brother. So when the news came that Hussein will leave Medina, Zainab took permission from Abdullah. They went together till Mecca. Hazrat Abdullah accompanies Imam Hussein and Sayyidah Zainab till Mecca. For whatever reason, some cite his health, some cite other reasons. Hazrat Abdullah, he did not accompany them from Mecca onwards. A short while after the caravan of Imam Hussein leaves Mecca, Abu al-Fadl Abbas comes to Imam Hussein. He says, "My master, Mawla, do I have permission to stop the caravan here for a short while?" Hussein says, "Tell me why." Abu Abdullah is told, "I can see somebody coming from behind us. Somebody is trying to catch up with us." Imam Hussein says, "Go, stop the caravan, see who it is." They see Hazrat Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, the husband of Bibi Zainab, approaching. As he approaches, he comes to Imam Hussein, he says his salams and he says, "May I speak with my wife?" Imam Hussein sends Abu al-Fadl Abbas to take Hazrat Abdullah to the carriage of Bibi Zainab. Hazrat Abdullah, he calls out to Bibi Zainab, "Assalamu alayki, ya bint Zahra." "My salams on you, O the daughter of Zahra." He says, "Salam alaykum to Sayyidah Zainab." Sayyidah Zainab responds with the salam, but before Hazrat Abdullah can say anything, Sayyidah Zainab looks at her husband, she says, "Abdullah, I understand this much. If you wish for me to come back with you to Medina, then fine, I will come. I won't go against you. But Abdullah, know this much. The wife that left Medina will not be the same one you take back to Medina. Why? If you take me away from my Hussein, it will be a living corpse that goes back to Medina. Abdullah, Zainab cannot live without her Hussein. Hazrat Abdullah, he says to her, Zainab, I am not here to take you away from Hussein. I am not here to take you back to Medina. Instead, I have come to act on a sunnah of Rasulullah. Bibi Zainab asked him, what sunnah is there that you remember that I cannot think of? What sunnah is there of my grandfather that you have remembered? Hazrat Abdullah, he looks at Sayyidah Zainab. He says, Zainab, whenever your grandfather used to leave the house to go on any journey, before he would leave, he would take out some sadaqah, he would take out some charity. I have come to take out sadaqah. Zainab, you left Makkah without our sons On and Muhammad. Zainab, I am giving these two boys as charity in the name of Islam. Zainab, take On from me. Take Muhammad from yourself if ever a time comes where Islam needs my two boys. Zainab, give them in the way of Islam. And now the days have passed. The family of Rasulullah have reached Karbala to the point where the 9th of Muharram has arrived. You have all heard the story, how Imam Hussein tested his companions. He invited them into a tent, he blew out the candle, he offered them the opportunity to leave. You know the story well. But in that same night, Abu Abdullah, he took a test of the women and children in his camps as well. How? That night, Abu Abdullah, he walks around from tent to tent, listening from the outside to see what is going on inside. What does he see or what does he hear when he stands outside the tent of Zainab Ulya Khatun? Zainab has her two boys sat in front of her. She sits in front of On and Muhammad. She tells them, my two princes, you are the grandsons of Ali Murtada, the grandsons of Jafar Tayyar. I have no doubt that tomorrow you will fight a fearsome battle, but whatever happens, remember, if you reach the river Furat, Hussein's Sakina is still thirsty. If you reach Furat, Asghar has still not had any water. One day I too will have to face my mother Zahra, my two princes, my own, my Muhammad on that day. Make sure Zainab is not embarrassed in front of her mother. Make sure that while Hussein's children are thirsty, you do not quench your thirst. Now the day of Ashura arrives. Zainab, she is hearing the cries of the women and children. Whenever a shaheed would be brought back to the tents, Sayyidah Zainab would be the first to go and cry over them. But she sees in all this time her two sons, her On and Muhammad. They are still walking around the camps. She calls them to her. She says, tell me, why is it that the companions have all given their lives, but my two sons are still here? My two sons haven't made their sacrifice. In that moment, the two boys look at their mother. They say to her, our mother Zainab, we have asked again and again and again, but whatever we do, your brother, our uncle, will not give us permission. Sayyidah Zainab, she turns to Bibi Fidda. She says, Fidda, call Abbas to me. Abul Fadl Abbas comes. Zainab says, Abbas, why will Hussein not let my two sons go? Abbas says, Sayyidah, my princess, ask Hussein yourself, I will bring him. Abu Abdullah now enters the tent. They all stand there. Zainab says, Hussein, tell me, why won't you let my children go to battle? Now Hussein looks at Zainab's two princes. For Hussein, the way Akbar is to Zainab, On and Muhammad are to Hussein. Hussein, he says, Zainab, how can I let them go? These are the sons of Abdullah. Maybe I don't have permission from Abdullah to let them fight their battle. Zainab says, no, Hussein, Abdullah sent them for this very purpose. He sent them to protect Islam. Now Abu Abdullah cannot refuse his sister any longer. He gets them ready for war, or rather Sayyidah Zainab gets them ready to go. They come to the entrance of the tents. As Hussein and Abbas stand there, getting ready to mount the two boys onto their horses, Zainab approaches. She says, Hussein, Abbas, come inside and bring my two boys with you. Hussein and Abbas enter with Honor Muhammad by their side. Sayyidah Zainab pulls a small trunk from a corner of the tent. She opens it. In it are two amamas. She lifts them up, hands one to Hussein, one to Abbas. She says, Hussein, this is the amama of my father Ali. Place this on the head of my child. Abbas, this is the amama of Jafar Tayyar. Place this on the head of my child. The Masa'ib have not begun yet. The Masa'ib have not begun yet, but I'll tell you one thing. Today we cry over that Zainab who didn't cry over her children. So make sure your tears do not run dry. Make sure your tears do not shy away. The two boys are sent off to battle. As they go, they fight together. They fight fiercely. They fight bravely. They attack the armies of Yazid. They attack the armies of Umar Sa'd and Shimar. They go from flank to flank. There are two armies in Yazid's camps, one by the name of Maymana, one by the name of Maysara. They attack them and both armies scatter to each side. As they attack, they go through the ranks one by one till the point where they stand in front of the river Furat, this flowing river. These two boys, hungry and thirsty for 3 days now. On looks at Muhammad. Muhammad looks at On. One brother says to another, my brother, you know what we must do. You know what we have to do. The thirst is overcoming them, but they turn their backs to the river. They attack the armies again. They get to the point where in their attack, they become getting closer and closer to the tent of Umar Sa'd himself. In that moment, a cry is heard. Somebody stop these two boys. As they do, the armies of Maymana and Maysara, they dive between the two young boys. They surround them from each side. Now On is split up from Muhammad. Muhammad cannot see On. One brother is fighting, but in his mind he's thinking of the other. The other brother is attacking, but in his mind he's worrying about his brother. There comes a point where a man, he strikes On the back of the head with a rock. As On is struck, he falls from his horse. As he falls from his horse, he calls out, Adrikni, come help me. His brother, hearing his call, he turns to try and find where On is. As Muhammad turns, somebody strikes him and brings him down from the horse. The cry is heard in the tents. Hussein and Abbas mount their horses. They ride out to the battlefield. Abbas rushes towards On, Hussein towards Muhammad. As Abbas reaches where On lies on the sand, he sees this young prince has already left this world. But as Abu Abdullah reaches Muhammad, he sees there is some life left in this child. He takes Muhammad into his arms. He holds him close. He says to him, Muhammad, tell me, is there anything your uncle can do for you in this moment? Muhammad looks at Abu Abdullah. He knows he has not got much life left. In that moment, he looks at his uncle. He says, my uncle, yes, there is one thing you could do for me. If I can ask you to do one thing, please. Abu Abdullah, he looks at this child. He says, Muhammad, tell me what your uncle can do in this moment. Muhammad looks at his uncle and he says, when you take our bodies back to the tents, tell our mother that like she said we reached the Furat, but remind her that her two sons did not drink any water. Tell her 2 boys died thirsty. Hussein and Abbas, they bring the 2 boys back to the tents. They lay them out in front of the tent. The women begin to cry. The women begin to mourn. Abu Abdullah, he looks everywhere between all the women, but he cannot see one woman. He turns to Fiddah, he asks Fiddah, where is my sister Zainab? We find Zainab in the tents doing shukr to Allah. Hussein says, Zainab, come, your sacrifice has been accepted. Sayyidah Zainab comes, she sits between the 2 bodies. She places her head in sajda. She calls out shukran lillah. But the Masa'ib have not ended, no. The Masa'ib of honor Muhammad have not ended yet. Why? Because Sayyidah Zainab's Masa'ib have not ended. The last point of Masa'ib I will mention, I've gone over time already. The last point of Masa'ib, Sayyidah Zainab in that moment, she didn't cry for her two boys as she was paraded through Kufa. She didn't cry when she looked at the heads of honor Muhammad on the spears in the prison of Sham. She didn't cry over honor Muhammad when they were released. There was a majlis held. Zainab didn't cry over honor Muhammad. The heads of the Shuhada were brought in. Zainab didn't take her boys' heads in her arms. They were released back to Karbala. They go for Arba'in. Zainab complains to Hussein and Abbas of everything that happened, but she does not mention honor Muhammad. They go back to Medina. She goes to the grave of Rasulullah. She cries over everything, but not honor Muhammad. The time comes where Sayyidah Zainab, she returns to her own home. Zainab returns to her own home. As she enters her house, there is a room to the left. As she looks into the room, Zainab sees two small musallas laid out on the floor. She sees where honor Muhammad used to read their salah. She takes the two musallas. She holds them to her chest. She turns towards Karbala. She calls out, Hussein, I did not cry when they gave their lives. I did not cry in Kufa, nor Sham, nor Karbala again. I did not complain to Rasulullah. But Hussein, I am a mother after all. Give Zainab permission in this moment. Let me cry over my two boys. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. We raise our hands in dua and we pray to Allah Azza wa Jal. Oh Allah, all our ibadat in the holy month of Muharram, accept them in your barakah. Oh Allah, for all those mu'mineen around the world struggling with ill health, particularly our brother Abdullah Abbas, grant them complete shifa. Oh Allah, for all those mu'mineen who are with us until last Muharram and now have left our ranks, raise their ranks in Jannah. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our Imam. Allow us to enter Jannah under his banner. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع الدعاء.